Hi, I'm Brandon, and today, as Michael said, we're going to talk about the 411 on PMM, Percona Monitoring and Management. And I just wanted to take a second and talk about that title. Urban Dictionary uses the definition of the relevant information or truth when you talk about 411. And this is the source of 411 actually goes back pretty far. So I'm going to give a little lesson here to some millennials out there. The source is that back in the day, using a telephone and actually a landline telephone number, you dial 411 in order to reach out to a live operator who would provide you with directory assistance. And what that means is that operator would give you information about somebody else's phone number. So that's the source of 411. And today, what we hope to be able to do is give you the truth and the realistic, relevant information you need as both an existing customer and for those that aren't yet on Percona Monitoring and Management, the future users of the product. So we'll go in from there. So I'll take a first stab at quick introduction as Mike, just to follow up on Michael. As Michael said, I'm relatively new to Percona, and I'm the senior product manager for both our Percona Monitoring and Management tool set, as well as some of the things that Peter spoke about in his keynote today, the enterprise platform. And so, those are my two areas of responsibility. Steve?
Thanks, Brandon. I just introduce myself, Steve Hoffman. I lead the platform engineering team, which PMM rolls up underneath. And just sort of a personal aside, I do remember dialing 411 pretty religiously the day we got to get rid of our phone book, and we could just dial a number and someone would give us the number, until we got our first phone bill and realized it was like 75 cents per use. And I don't know, my mother chased us around the house. We spent so much money dialing information. So,
well,
but excited to be here. Happy to talk about PMM and the 411.
It's a good thing that Percona is an open source software because we don't charge for our directory assistance here. So, all right. From an agenda standpoint, we wanted to hit on a few different things. I'm going to start here in slides, and I'll cover this PMM Framework, which is a new visual representation of the key jobs to be done, if anyone is familiar with that, approach or methodology, that jobs to be done within a tool like PMM. And we'll then dive into some of the new feature functionality that we've added to the product since the last Percona Live back in May, and hit on some of the key highlights there. I'll then turn over to Steve, and he'll go into the application itself and demonstrate some of those same what's new features. And he'll then finish by turning it back over to me, and I'll pick back up in slides around the what's next, hit some of the roadmap items over the next 6, 12, 18 months. So we'll go from there. All right, from a PMM framework perspective, and I was listening a little bit earlier, about an hour or so ago, Marcus from SolarWinds had a presentation on monitoring and management capabilities, and it was interesting to kind of tie this into some of the elements of this diagram as well. One of the key things about this diagram is that PMM is actually one of these products that's hard for a product manager to say this, but I don't want users to spend all day in this particular product. And that's because PMM is a set and forget type of application. And that's highlighted by the monitoring and alerting. This quadrant in this life cycle here is all about being able to identify what metrics and key performance indicators that you want to be focusing on, and then creating business rules or alerts so that the system itself can be looking for issues or potential issues around those key performance indicators, and then communicating to you, basically tapping you on the shoulder wherever you want to get that tap, to say, you know what, I think it's time for you to come back into the interface because there's a potential issue arising and you need to look into that. And so what this lifecycle is all about are those issues within your database environment. And it starts with the monitoring and alerting and setting those up so that the system can do the work for you. And as you kind of go into monitoring alert, you need to hit the configure module. That's where you're basically telling the application, these are the databases and the clusters, the environments that we want you to pay attention to. And you'll, initially set those up, but obviously need to make changes to that configuration over time as new databases get added to the overall environment, subtracted, and edits to those specific databases. One other thing to mention on monitoring alerting is that historically PMM focused on database performance monitoring, and that's really our roots with the product. Back in the May timeframe at the last Percona Live, we introduced what we call security threat tool, and that kind of forked off not just monitoring database performance, but also monitoring database security. And so now when we talk about monitoring and alerting, it's both performance and security based. All right, so if monitoring and alerting, is trying to help you identify the issues, from there you move on into diagnose and troubleshoot. And that's all about taking that issue and getting to its root cause. And we provide a rich set of tools highlighted by our tool that we call Quan, which stands for Query Analytics, that allows you to go deep inside of that specific issue to get to its root cause. And the reason you get to the root cause is really twofold. One, it's to be able to, as quickly as possible, eradicate that specific issue from the environment right now and fix it so that the environment can get back to a steady state. And then second, and that's what optimize is all about. And then secondarily, it's about making tweaks to the environment so that hopefully that root cause issue never materializes again. And that's what manage is about, being able to make those database command changes for the long term. And once you've gone through those two cycles as well, you're right back to now kind of a neutral environment and allowing PMM to do its monitoring job again to detect any new issues coming in. And so that's really what this new framework is about. And we hope to get your feedback and hope to see a lot of this materialize through the application as time goes on. I will say that that framework is a visionary concept behind PMM. Not all of that is in the product today. And when we get to the what's next, we'll highlight some of those key elements that are coming soon. All right, so as far as what's new now, there are 5 key elements that we want to focus on. You might know that Percona's roots are in MySQL. Thanks, Vadim and Peter, for all of your efforts there and your background in history. And so, our core strength at the outset with PMM was also in MySQL. But we have an objective within PMM is to be able to monitor and manage all leading open source database technologies. And these first 2 items that are on this list fall directly into that objective. The release today of PG Stat Monitor, that was released in a tech preview. We expect general availability to happen either later this year or very early next. That piece is being able to take the PG Stat Monitor that's in the Postgres distribution and integrate that within PMM so that we're now providing a much richer, robust set of database metrics that can be visualized and help you with both that monitoring and troubleshooting process for the root cause that we just talked about in that last diagram. And then from a MongoDB exporter standpoint was another key release recently, which was on the MongoDB side in order to, again, expose a very deep set of exported data for quick issue resolution. I talked about that security threat tool that we came out with in May, and between May and now, we've really spent some additional time around enhancements of security threat tool. One of the key elements of that is being able to click a single button on that interface to on demand launch those checks in the environment to check on security related issues, as well as being able to silence alerts when, for example, you're in a maintenance mode and you don't necessarily want to get alerts around checks at that point in time. So a lot of good work that went into a security threat tool. Steve's going to highlight annotations in his demonstration. And one of the key pieces there is being able to correlate on the visual representation when you're seeing a spike to see trend lines that show you exactly what happened at that point in time. Maybe there was an upgrade in the environment. Maybe there was other factors that went in, and you can quickly be able to determine what those notations are all about and why you're seeing some of those spikes. And then probably lastly, and most importantly, is an entire rewrite of that robust tool that we call Quan. And we rewrote that in React. We're now supporting, from a MongoDB side, the explain piece to be able to see the detail behind the queries there, more graphs that we are exposing, and an overall simplification of the user interface as a whole. So with that, I'll turn over to Steve to run the demo.
All right, bear with me as I attempt to switch my screen over. And the danger of a live demo here. Let's make sure, okie dokie, and resume. Brandon, just kind of give me the nod if I'm showing my demo environment.
Yep, we got it.
Awesome. I will move it over to this screen, so I'm kind of, nope, can't do that. So I'm not going to be looking at you while I'm talking through this. So first and foremost, I'm not going to go through the list the same order that Brandon kind of highlighted them, just because, well, it makes it a little clunky to demo it that way. So I'm only going to talk about the MongoDB exporter. I'm not really going to show anything. The key highlight there for the MongoDB exporter is it's dynamic. We don't have to release a new version as new metrics become available in future releases of Mongo. We've built it so that as it scrapes and it finds something new, it will pull it in. You'll automatically start benefiting from it. You can start creating your graphs should you get a hold of that data before we can release updated graphs to take advantage of it. So there are new metrics available in the new Mongo exporter, but I think that's the big highlight is as they come out, you're just going to be able to take advantage of them. So some of the places I want to really highlight, though, is we'll start with Security Threat Tool, just as a follow-on from our last Percona Live, where we unveiled the Security Threat Tool. And one of the things that we've introduced, and this is based on feedback, was being able to do a real-time run of checks and then being able to silence alerts. Those were two of the core or key asks from our user base of, look, I know this is broken and I'm going to fix it, but not now. I want to eliminate the noise. So let me silence that for some period. We defaulted to 24 hours. But it's just a quick demo of that. I'm looking at my security alerts. You can see I've got 3 core alerts, and then one of them is I've got a user with a blank password in here. I can go ahead and disable that user or get that account fixed. But really what I want to do is just silence it so that it no longer appears for me. And what'll happen is that alert will silence itself for a period of 24 hours, and then it will come back up if I've yet to take action on it. I did just see the APIs demoed for me today, so I know this is on the forefront of coming out. I know I'm probably not supposed to be talking about the future, but what is about to come out is the list and then disable and enable checks. So in addition to this, right now we're running checks. You don't actually know which ones are running. You'll be able to pull up a complete list of all the checks you've pulled down from the Percona cloud, and you'll be able to see what's running, and then you can choose to disable the ones that you don't want to run, or if you decide later on you want to enable it, you'll have that capability. So I've seen the APIs, they do exist, and then we'll be building the user interface to that forthcoming. The next place I'm going to jump into, and let me just I'm going to get a little bit of load going on this system so that it makes our demo that much more purposeful. We're going to come in and take a look at our Postgres instance summary with a really cool tool that, as a former systems administrator, man, this is the thing that I got bugged with all the time. I love graphs. I would always put these up on the board so that people can kind of see what the state of things are in the business. Let's get our resolution up a little bit so you can see some activity here. And so, we would run these demos in the building, and someone would come up and inevitably ask me, what is going on? So I'm just gonna, hey, I got a call. We want to do a quick load test. And so I'm gonna grab a snippet here, and we're gonna paste this in. And so while that's running, what you're going to notice is, one of the commands that I passed in to begin with was a PMM admin annotate command. This is something you can incorporate in with your CI/CD environment as part of your build scripts, as part of your normal course of business. And what's going to allow you to do is create some clear markers in the application that something happened. And so when people would walk by our desk and say, oh my gosh, what's that spike on the graph? We would all look at it and, of course, distracted, panic, and not know what it is. We can hover over it now, and you can see benchmark started, 2 clients, 10,000 transactions attached to that service. There are all kinds of permutations and combinations that you can put annotations with. You can do it per service, per node. You can do a combination of service and node. You can do your entire fleet of systems. You can do only particular labels. Annotations is incredibly powerful. And you can see with my little script, I had it both at the start and at the end. So I'm able to see when the benchmark started, when the benchmark ended, and you can see my load pretty much corresponds to it, save for a little bit of trailing load. Now, with that, I want to jump over to our query analytics tool. Query analytics, as Brandon mentioned earlier, really got its core in MySQL. Obviously, that's where the core expertise came from, but that's not who Percona is exclusively anymore. We continue to iterate on making MongoDB and Postgres equally as robust in terms of information. It was funny, one of the previous talks, one of the last slides, point number 6 said, talking about query level performance, right? That's one of the things you need to pay attention to, not just the overall system profile, but information at the query level. That's really been our focus. And so with both a combination of query analytics and the tech preview of PG Stat Monitor, you're going to see that we've gone even deeper into that. So, my little dummy system, my little test system that I've got there, I've set up some transactions on here. And what you can see now is query level detail, both at the system CPU time and user CPU time. And that's going to help you make determinations on, are these things running at the Postgres level, or are they based on your query? That is powerful. The other big thing to call out is we've added this through PG Stat Monitor, the ability to filter based on IP. I've only got one client running, so you're only getting one IP return. But if you had a fleet of application servers throwing load at your system and one of them runs away, you can filter exclusively by that. Whole bunch of other features going into PG Stat Monitor. I'm not going to spoil it now. There's a much more in-depth talk. I believe it's 11 o'clock Eastern tonight, and that's being done by a combination of the engineer who built the PG Stat Monitor tool, as well as the engineer on my team who built our integration with it. So I'm not going to steal his thunder. You'll just have to stay tuned. And the last thing I want to take a quick tour around is the query analytics. Brandon mentioned we rewrote it. This was no small feat. We did so because we didn't like the old interface. We were restricted in the Angular world. It did not allow us to create the features that people were requesting just because of the limitations that come to us from Grafana, which is the core interface we use for graphing. But now we've gotten rid of some of those constraints. And what you're seeing is, our all new query analytics. Number one, I'm going to point out the spark lines. And you can see when I highlight, I get indication on all the graphs exactly what we're looking at. So I can do line by line comparison, because the thing that's spiked isn't always the root cause. And so I can see what else is going on at the same time. Another highlight here, and I love this one, is the search by. So if I want to find any queries that have executed with the word orders in it, well, that's a bad word. Let's try something more generic like select. So I can get out all my select queries. If I want to be, more granular and I want to see my wheres, again, I can get all the queries that have where clauses to them. So, this is just helping you find the information that matters a little bit faster. Another piece, and I think the last piece I'll talk about before I get yanked off stage, something that we've been asked for is, I see this information. I want to see what's happening on the node. So we've given this new little graph icon, which allows you to either click on for service name or node name, and it'll actually take you directly to the node stats so that you can zoom in. And notice we open in a new window. So whatever filters, whatever date range or time ranges you have set, you don't lose any of that information. And again, that's based on feedback from users. There are so many more features. I know Brandon's got a list at the end. I love to talk about it, but I'm going to stop myself here because I could go on for the rest of Percona Live, and then Bronwyn would chase me down. So with that, I am going to pause, get us back on our main presentation.
Yeah, so where I wanted
Brandon?
to pick up, thanks, Steve, appreciate it. Where I wanted to pick up is now talking about what's next. Learned a little bit more about what's new recently. What you're going to see from a functionality standpoint around what's next falls in the areas that we want to put forward in order to complete this life cycle and make sure that we have a full visioned tool through this overall life cycle. Historically, our strengths have been in monitor and in diagnose and troubleshoot. Those are the two areas that, from the outset of PMM, that's where our focus was. That left gaps around alerting, optimize, and manage. Today in the platform, you have that ability to do alerting through third-party integration with both Grafana and Alert Manager. Coming out later this quarter, in Q4, you're going to see a functionality that we're calling integrated alerting, which is building in alerting capabilities directly within PMM itself, so that you don't have to go out to a third party and then bring that in. So that's one of the key first elements. And then optimize and manage are those two other areas that we feel are going to help close the gap and get to completeness. So yeah, that's okay, Steve. You can move on to that next. Sorry. So those are the main pieces from a functionality standpoint, and I'll drill inside of that optimize and manage here in just a little bit further. But before I go there, I also wanted to talk about architectural gaps or infrastructure. And there's three main areas that we intend to fill within the next number of quarters as well. First, that starts around Kubernetes. I think you've seen through a number of sessions that have already happened today, the drive toward Kubernetes, and certainly from a Percona standpoint, we think highly from that standpoint as well. And so being able to run PMM inside of a Kubernetes cluster, key architectural component there. And then a second is around kind of the infrastructure of high availability or HA, as well as disaster recovery. And so those are the three areas when we're talking architecturally where we'll bring the product over the next number of quarters. And then from a functionality standpoint, I mentioned top level, these three areas of alert, optimize, and manage. Breaking that down a little bit, I want to put some meat on the bones behind that. We're looking first at an initial focus must-haves of these 5 elements. And by the middle of next year, middle of 2021, we expect to have a nice set of functionality around these 5 elements, from alerting to inventory management and configuration management, backup and restore, and maintenance. And so those capabilities there that allow you to both find the issue on a more appropriate basis, but then also remedy and both the issue in the short term so that you get the environment back to that steady state, but also try to take those commands to be able to get the issue out of the environment for the long term. And then as we move beyond kind of the middle of next year, where we're heading is also closing gaps around these other management and optimized capabilities, from database creation through indexing and logging as well. And so this is the key focus for our team. The last thing I'll just end with, and Steve mentioned this in his introduction, is that the platform team is comprised of PMM functionality, but also this new software platform that we're coming out with that we're calling Enterprise Platform. And so you've seen, go ahead, Steve, you've seen this diagram from the very first keynote this morning. Our team is going to be focusing around building out the functionality of the deploy and operate from a DBAS perspective, and embedding that within what we're calling Customer Portal to be able to deliver all of the information needed from both from access to this functionality to all information about your support tickets and trainings and subscription information. We have just a plethora of exciting functionality that's coming out through that enterprise platform. So that's where our PMM and platform team is aiming to focus. And we look forward to getting your feedback from here, just any questions that we might be able to address. And then also, as Bronwyn had recommended before, please go visit the feedback page to be able to rate our session and give us, what you want to see in the future. Michael, did any questions come through?
We had a couple come through. One of them was asking about alerting. I wondered if maybe you could talk a little bit about that and how it can be integrated with some different alerting platforms, such as PagerDuty or some others.
Absolutely. Steve, I can take a first stab at it. What we're definitely looking from a communication channel to be able to deliver those alerts to all of the leading channels that you would expect: PagerDuty, Slack, and then obviously the email and SMS and phone tree type of pieces there as well. Any communication channel that you're utilizing today with a tool like Alert Manager, you'd expect to bring those in over the longer term with alerting internal to PMM as well.